Wysteria, energy, twister.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and obviously we've looked at the A to Z of fairies. The fairies we did, as I said, I wanted to put more in there. The reason being we just did the English, Irish and Scottish fairies, but there are fairies worldwide. So now we're going to look at all the other fairies from all over the world. We start with the A-senee-ki-wakw. These are the Abenaki mythology of the Algonquian-speaking Native American tribes of northeastern North America. They were a race of stone giants, as well as the first race created by the mythical and cultural hero Glooskap. Sadly, because the A-senee-ki-wakw were so large they crushed many animals and did damage to the earth when they moved. For this, Glooskap had them destroyed. The Abba. So the Abba is a nymph form of the Ergiski in Caconia in northern Greece, according to the mythology of ancient Greece, by the god of the sea Poseidon, Neptune. She was the mother of the town's founder. Then we move on to the Abarbarea. There's also the Barbarian and their nymphs from the mythology of ancient Greece and Rome. One of the naiads, she was named in Homer's Iliad as having been the mother of Cephas and Pedasus, and the consort of Bucolion, by which she bore two sons as well, so it says. The Abarbaree means unmuddy. It's a spring nymph from the mythology of classical Greece and Rome, one of the naiads, who once joined, apparently, the nymph Calliope in a sexual encounter with the fresh corpses of mortal oxherder named Hymnos. Later, Abarbaree bore the Trojan prince, Bucolion, two sons in an illicit affair. Whether they are real or not, who knows, but... The Abbey Lubbers. These are like the buttery spirits that we've already spoke about, but they're called something different in the folklore of England. They're called the Abbey Lubber, and it's a type of injurious fae. From the folklore of England, they live in abbeys and other religious houses that have allowed themselves to become overindulgent and wanton. These fae are described as wearing a red cap, leather apron and long light blue stockings since the 15th century. The Abbey Lubbers have tried to tempt the brothers and monks to stray from their life of piety and give in to drunkenness, gluttony and an array of other excesses in order to damn their souls. In some circles, these fae are considered to be a type of lesser demon, known as butterfly spirits. They're the lay version of the Abbey Lubber. The Abcan. Variations are Abcan. It's a dwarf, a poet of the Tuatha de Danann. Abcan means little dwarf. Possessed a bronze boat with a sail made of tin. It is in this vessel, according to law, he ferries the goddess round from the other world to ours so she can seduce a human. Aed Snoma, in another story, Abcan was once captured by the hero Cuchulainn, but was able to free himself by playing lullabies so enthralling the warrior fell asleep. Abdullah al-kazwini. First named in a tale, 1001 Tales of the Arabian Nights, the merman is exactly this, the Abdullah al-kazwini, befriended and assisted a poor fisherman. The Abartach. There's also a variation of it called the Mabeo. The oldest known recorded vampire story in Western Europe comes from ancient Celtic lore and is said to have taken place in the rural parish of Glenullin, Londonderry, in the town of Slotavete, Ireland. It's a tale of a merciless tyrant and a powerful sorcerer, the Abartach dwarf. Traditionally, he is described as being a short man, a dwarf in many tellings, having a physical deformity. Abartach also possess magical abilities. As being described as a dwarf, it's likely not a fae nor a member of fairy kind, but rather a man of uncommonly short nature. Nevertheless, the story says one night, Abartach, a jealous and suspicious man, convinced himself his wife was being unfaithful to him. Unwilling to confront her directly and wanting to catch her in the act of adultery, he climbed out of the window and crept along the ledge toward his wife's bedroom. Before he could clear the distance and have a peek into his wife's room, he slipped and fell to his death. Abartach's body was discovered in the morning, and the people of the town buried him as if he were a king, standing upright in his grave. The day after his funeral, yes, he returned, demanding each person cut their wrist and bleed into his blood daily in order to sustain his life. His people complied. They were too terrified of him to oppose his will while he was alive. They certainly did not want to do anything to further upset him now that he was dead. However, it did not take long for them to decide they were unwilling to live under the tyranny of such an obvious revenant. So, they hired an assassin to kill him. Although the attempt was initially successful, Abartach returned, demanding his daily allotment of blood. Undeterred, another assassin was hired, but with the same results. After several more failed assassination attempts, a druid came forward and promised he could free them from the creature, Abartach, once and for all. The druid explained because of the nature of the magic used to return the tyrant, combined with the type of creature he became, a mobile, ancient Gaelic for vampire. Their evil ruler could not be permanently destroyed, only trapped. The druid used a sword made of yew wood and ran Abartach through, and while he was in a weakened state, he was buried upside down in a grave and then covered it with ash branches, thorns, and a large boulder. It is said, in the town of Slothavate, the name means Abartach's grave, even to this day. Abartach will attack anyone who comes too near his gravesite, so he's unable to fully escape it. Next to the boulder that helps imprison him, a large thorn tree now grows out of the burial site, pinning him to the earth. So basically, don't get too close to him, because he will attack you if you're at his gravesite. The next is the Abonde. This is also known as the Abundia and the Abonde. Dame Abonde. Dame Abonde also. In French mythology, Abonde was a fairy queen living in the forest of Lorraine, France. She was described as being tall, star-crowned, and the consort of the Worcester Hobony. In some folklore, she was also described as being one of the dames blanches, white ladies, of the French law, a peer of La Dame d'Appigny. Abonde was an equivalent of the French Father Christmas or Santa Claus, delivering toys to children on New Year's Day's night. Abundia. Variations of her name are Abundantina, Abunde. She's also known as Dame Abonde, and also Abundia Abonde. A fairy queen, Abundia, meaning abundant, and her band of fairies haunt stables. At night, they enter into barns and twist the manes of horses into tangled knots, causing them to sweat. However, these fae can be placated with offerings of food and wine. Next is the Acalica. The Acalica are a species of weather fae, like nature spirits from Volvanian lore. They have a particular influence over frost, hail, and rain. Rarely seen as they live underground in caves, these fairies are described as looking like tiny, wizened men. The Acamantis. In Greek mythology, Acamantis was a water nymph and one of the named Danads, the collective name for the daughters of Danaus. Her name appears in a list of Danads generated by Gaius Julius Hyginus, 64 BC AD 17, a Latin author. Acamantis was wedded to Economus and killed him on their wedding night. Acaste. Born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys, Acaste was one of the named Oceanids in classic Greek mythology. Acaste was the name of one of the Nereids and daughters of Nereus and Doris. And then the next is Achille, or there's Achilles, Apus. 3 names, Achille. The Achilles are a group of nature spirits from the folklore of Aymara people of Bolivia, whose ancestral home is located in the Andes Mountains. These fairies keep a watchful eye on the Aymara, assisting them as needed, and oftentimes sending dreams to warn of upcoming dangers and unfortunate situations. Described as looking like old people, and they're said to live underground. The Achilles control the weather and send frost, hail, or rain to the region depending on how benevolent they are feeling. In the high mountain passes, stone altars dedicated to the Achilles have been erected. To this day, travellers leave offerings of alcohol and cocoa or coca. The Achelous, born one of the 6,000 children of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Achelous is one of the few male named Oceanid. He was king of the river spirits in classical Greek mythology. In addition to ensuring the proper nurturing of young men, as well as being a spirit of prosperity, he also begot bodies of water such as rivers, springs, and streams. Like all river spirits, Achelous is fertile. He fathered the nymphs, sirens, and many of the sea spirits. In one story, Achilles and Hercules did combat against one another, competing for the same woman. During the battle, Hercules ripped off one of Achilles' horns. As the blood landed upon the earth, the sirens were born. Being a prosperity spirit, this spontaneous birth is a prime example of his fertility. This has led some to theorize Achilles' loosened horn is a true horn of plenty. Could mean that though, kind of the same. Acheron, born of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus Tethys. Acheron means war. It's one of the named Oceanids, and was a nymph and a guardian of a small river in ancient Greece. Actea, a sea nymph. Actea was a nereid of the rocky shoreline in classical Greek mythology, and was born of Nereus and Doris. Additionally, in Greek mythology, Actea was a water nymph and one of the named Danads, the collective name for the daughters of Denus, in a list compiled by Apollodorus, a Greek scholar and grammarian. She was one of the daughters of Piera and was wedded to Periphas, one of the sons of Gorgo. Actea, a sea nymph. Actea was one of the named Nereids in classical Greek mythology. She was born the daughter of Nereus and Doris. Actea. Actea is a nymph from Greek mythology. Actea was a nymph of the shore and the Nereids of despair. She was born the daughter of Nereus and Doris. Ad-Herne. In the Manx Gaelic language of Ad-Herne themselves, it means, is a euphemistic word used for it anyway, when returned to the fairies of the Isle of the Man. As it is believed, the fae can be directly summoned by saying their name aloud. Adhunal. In Irish mythology, Adhunal was a fairy animal, one of the many haunting dogs of the cultural hero Finn Mac Cumhail. His other dogs were Bran, Luath Lachir, Sglon, and Seado. Adiante. In Greek mythology, Adiante was a water nymph and one of the named Danads, the collective name for the daughters of Denos, in a list compiled by Apollodorus, a Greek scholar and grammarian. She was one of the daughters of Herse and was wedded to Dephron, one of the sons of Hephaestion. Adite. In Greek mythology, Adite was a water nymph and one of the named Danads, the collective name for the daughters of Dionysus, in the list compiled by Apollodorus. As she was one of the sons of Gorgo, she came from one of the sons of Gorgo, apparently. Admete. Variations, Admeta and Ameto. She was born of the 3,000 daughters of Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Admete was one of the Oceanid and the companion of Persephone, or Proserpina in classical Greek mythology. She was also one of the named Nereids, and as such said to be one of the daughters of Nereus and Doris. Adraste, one of the Haiad. Adraste was a name for Mount Ida on the island of Crete in the Greek Aegean Sea. She was one of the nurses to the infant god Zeus, or Jupiter. Adraste was commonly grouped with fellow nymphs, Althea and Idothea, Adrasteia. There's variations, it's actually Nemesis as well. It's in ancient Roman mythology. Adrasteia and Ida were the mountain nymphs who lived in Actea. They were wet nurses to the infant god Zeus, Jupiter. In Greek mythology, Adrastea was born, the daughter of the god Zeus and his lover, Ananke. Adrasteia, the inescapable, apparently. A nymph from Mount Ida on the island of Crete in Greek, Aegean Sea, and according to the mythology of classical Greece and Rome, she was one of the many nurses of the infant god Zeus or Jupiter. Like I say, it does change that, by the way. Abrat. Abrat was the fairy king in Irish mythology. He was the father of the fairy queen Fand and Liban. The Agarius in ancient Greek mythology. Agarius, or the Hamadryad of the black poplar tree. She was born from the incestuous relationship between Achelous and his sister. This is Aegina, and also is known as Aegina, Aegina. She is a river nymph. She was born of the river goddess Asopus and the male nymph Metope, according to classical Greek mythology. This naiad was the guardian of the island in Saronic Gulf and bears her name. Although there are a few tales claiming that the god Zeus shared a mutual romantic interlude, the stories of her abduction and rape by the god far outnumber them. Her father attempted to rescue her, but was driven off by Zeus's thunderbolts. Ultimately, she ended up having 2 children with the god, a godling named Arceus and a mortal son named Menoetius. Eagle. Greek lore, dazzling light, was a daughter of Zeus and considered to be the most beautiful of naiads. There is also a dryad by this name who is one of the daughters of Atlas and Pleione, making her one of the Pleiades as well. Eagle is also one of the 4 Hesperides, a group of 4 naiad sisters who were charged with the protection of the golden apple tree that grew the golden apples the goddess Gaia gave the goddess Hera, and were stolen by the godling. Heracles, which is also, by the way, can be known as Hercules now, but they've changed the name through time. For example, the goddess Hera can now be seen as the goddess Juno. It changes through time, as you know. Anyway, Theas from Aradin were holy. A final nymph named Agel was one of the 7 daughters of Helios. So it says, anyway. The Engus, son of Dagda and Boan, was the handsome and witty harpist of the Tuatha De Danann in Irish mythology. He was also a fairy encountered among the Sihi, an invisible being with power over mortals. The Engus had the ability to reanimate corpses and let them speak to his followers. Sometimes he was regarded an Irish god of fatal love. Ethere means upper air, was a nymph in the mythology of classical Greece and Rome. According to the Greek oral poet Hesiod, when her brother Phanton died, she and her 7 sisters were transformed into amber weeping poplar tree. The sisters were collectively known as the daughters of Helios. Their names are Agen, Ethere, Deoxyp, Heliades, Lampete, Merope, and Phoebe. I like how the last one's just normal Phoebe. Aethra, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Aethra, bright sky, one of the named Oceanus. Sometimes she is referred to as the wife of Atlas, making her the mother of Pleiades and the half-sisters of the Hyades. Avon, and there are many variations to these names, but she's the fairy queen of Munster. Avon meaning burning with fire, held a midnight court to determine whether husbands were meeting their wives' sexual needs. Predisposed to say the men were lazy and prudish, she would hear both sides of the case before ruling the husband must blow to the wife's needs. The ancestral mother of the O'Brien clan, Abel, served as their banshee and oversees a dozen more additional families. Her personal adversary was the sea nymph Clydna, who once turned her into a white cat. So So as you can see, the fairies from just the English are very different from worldwide fairies. They're not the same at all. They have all these mythical names that are not normally had, you know. So that's why they're quite fascinating. And also it's important to understand that I'm giving you the oldest names in which they are known for. As time goes by, these names are pronounced differently. They are also changed through time. So understand that sometimes when I give you a selection of names, it really doesn't matter. It's just that with time comes changes. Thank you for listening to this episode of our Global Fairies, and many blessings.
Wysteria, energy, twister.